Welcome to Let's Chew the Gum. I'm your host, Protocol. We're talking about a lot of things in this show while we chew the gum. And as always, on each and every show, we always have
something for your mind, something for your mind, something for your mind,
정신을 집어넣으세요. 안에 어떤 것이 필요합니까?
something for your
정신을 집어넣으세요.
mind,
정신을 집어넣으세요.
something for your
Welcome back to the next episode of Let's Chew the Gum, the podcast where we talk about everything from A to Z. Today, we have Mr. Terry Boykins of Street Positive back in the studio to finish off where we left, talking about pimp-proofing our daughters, our sons, our communities, where we just were having a really integrated conversation about social responsibility and community development and improvement. Again, this is Let's Chew the Gum, the podcast where we talk about everything from A to Z. You can find our podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, Spreaker, Breaker, so many platforms, YouTube. I can't name them all, but you can always reach us at letschewthegum@gmail.com if you have show topics you'd like to hear discussed or to be a guest on the show. So without further ado, I'd like to bring back in Mr. Terry Boykins of Street Positive, and we'll continue our conversation. So, Mr. Boykins, I'm really glad that you were able to come back to finish this conversation. How's it going today?
It's good. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Great. So we left off with the last segment of we were talking about the transition in our communities with the prison industrial complex going on and fathers out of the homes and your specific work in engaging in the community to help build and bond those father-daughter, father-son relationships. And we last talked about this insane idea that as fathers became more absent from the home due to social policies, etc., that now we have our own daughters calling the pimps daddy. So I'd like to pick up our conversation from there and enlighten our listeners a bit.
Absolutely. You know, we talk about this designation, this role designation of daddy. The affirmation, when we talk about leaving our daughters uncovered with their affirmation or example of modeling of a man or a positive role model. And so what's available to them are the guys that did stay available in the community that may have gone into the pimp game. That may have gone into the hustle, but they were available. See, here's the thing. Their daddy may not be around, but now these other men are that did enough to stay out of the game, stay out of the pen. But now that they are available to get their hustle on, they take on the role. And so the daughters looking for affirmation from a positive male role model or a father figure had a chance to get connected to someone who was available on the streets in the community that could affirm her. And that's what we've had occur is a bunch of men who've had the ability to stay out of the game, out of the pen for whatever duration of time that were close enough to create a relationship with her so she can now call him daddy.
Right, the filling the void, so to speak. Yeah, it's interesting. The individuals that we're talking about are also some of the sons that were left without fathers again, and they're having to find a way to fend for themselves. And the result of that is some of them start to find that maybe they aren't able to make it in other streams in society, and so this advantageous game of pimping or being taking advantage of what's there may result in them being the ones who are not guided enough to realize that, you know, these are our own communities that we're taking advantage of. And in particular, a useful and a resource such as our women, right? And having them turned out. And that's
you bring
unfortunate.
Up a great point. It is unfortunate. And I think we had a chance to get some recovery of that. And maybe not soon enough. And I think that I spent a lot of time working with different mentoring groups around the country that was focused in on positive male particularly African American male, behaviors and pathways, understanding their emotions, understanding their needs to pursue opportunities outside of entertainment and athletics. And so we did a chance to rally. You bring up a good point about some of these young men that were left behind because their fathers weren't available. But we also began to spend a lot of time on their emotional needs and not their constructive provision, pathways, education attainment practices that allow them to be good, solid men in the community. So we had a chance to really deal with an issue, particularly when we talk about the emasculation of the male components, because they were on survival mode. They were on hustle. How are we going to make this? Maybe I didn't, acquire the skills. As you know, if you look at the benchmarks of education in mathematics and the sciences, as we talk about technology, the STEM fields, a lot of our African American males were not performing in those categories, and thus were not being brought into the colleges and universities that were able to get them careers in those high-paying professions. And we all know what happened with the tech industry and the kind of money that was made. So we did leave a lot on the table because we had to focus on just helping a lot of our males deal emotionally. And I think it cost us greatly.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And that emotional support oftentimes has been something that some males may not have been aware that they needed it. And even some that knew that that something was missing, that I needed something. Oftentimes there's been this ingrained reluctance for Black males to seek out that type of help because it's a situation to where many may feel like it's a weakness and they don't want to show that weakness and that they have it all together. But I remember you speaking about some of the groups in our last segment that you had a chance to work with, such as the Black Star Project with, I think you mentioned Philip Jackson, and the Campaign for Black Male Achievement, and you mentioned the name Sean Dove, I believe, and just organizations like that are focused on that. So that's a very necessary component, and it's great that we've been able to make some strides in changing that stigma of the idea if you have a problem or if you need help, it's a weakness, and being able to restructure that to say, hey, if you have a problem, it's okay to seek help. As a matter of fact, that's the responsible thing to do as a man, or anybody for that matter. If you have a problem, get help.
Yeah, to get help. And then what we did going into Daughters Lives Matter in terms of segmenting or transitioning from working with males to working with female populations, what I found is that there was a significant void, and there had been a void, Dr. Kwanda, for a number of years with regards to women, and that was with leadership. So while we were focusing on the emotional needs of men, women were taking the lead of maybe being breadwinners or getting occupations and resources and funding that was helping them propel themselves. And leadership was not often available to them. And as I began to interact with Daughters Lives Matter on those three principles, education attainment, victimization prevention, poverty avoidance, I started looking at how they merge together. So if the male that they interact with doesn't have leadership qualities or has the academic acumen that allows him to obtain his particular place in society and his profession, self-esteem issues occur, threats of not being able to pull his own weight, his anger, his frustration with not being able to provide for his family, which could result in his insecurities, his willingness to use domestic violence as an outlet to that anger, to control his situation, to feel like he's not losing it, he's got his household in control. But then the risk of something breaking down in the family, in the community, in the relationship that causes that to splinter, and maybe children going into foster care or dad going into incarceration or being asked to leave the home, and then the mom having to pull the weight of now having to raise a child or children, but also struggling to just maintain a level of basic needs and never getting ahead. And so when we talked about this issue about fathers making sure that there was some sustainability and some preservation with his daughter being more than just getting ahead, is for her not to get pimped in the game, is her not to basically lose herself with regards to who she would come in contact or what she was being told. And that is where, when we talk about the issue of poverty, this is now something that we are really dealing with. And so there may be a number of women who can hold down the household right now, but can she thrive?
Right.
And can she thrive by having the emotional and the physical risk of threat confronting her? And if a father does not allow his daughter to understand the game, embrace her for what she has to do and where she has to be, in the event she encounters someone who can't help her hold it down and get to the next level, then we're putting ourselves in a community at great risk by what we're doing to women. And I think we're putting too much on women. I believe that part of the dynamic in society now, if we put so much on women, that we're going to be nearing a breaking threshold, mental health, based on the conversation I'm having with women and how many of them did not have that positive male affirmation relationship with a father, that we're out now in a few decades. And I think the needle is starting to crack. I think we're really starting to see the results of what took place when fathers were moved out of the home back in the 70s.
How about that? Excuse me. You bring up some interesting points there, and I think that is something that crosses all cultural realms in terms of those relationship dynamics. I want to, for a minute, to focus in on a micro level to the African American community, because you talked a great deal about this topic. But I'd like to suggest that it goes back even to slavery, and I think that a lot of these things have been ingrained throughout society. So, for example, I was talking with someone about going back to information that you can find sourced in the Willie Lynch letter, where you have this slave trader in the Caribbean who was known for breaking his slaves, and in the Carolinas you had some issues with individuals who did not want to succumb to the degradations of slavery, but Willie Lynch was known for breaking his slaves. And so the idea that he had is that if we can take the male as a protective figure out of the family dynamic, we can conquer the family. And so he'd have suggestions to get the strongest male that everyone respected, and in front of all the slaves, break him down, whether that meant emasculating him literally by castration, or even gruesome things like cutting off the limbs or tying the limbs to two trees and binding the tree so tight that when it snaps, the body breaks in half, or two horses, anything to degrade that male to where the females now are realizing that I cannot depend on my male for protection. And so in a sense, it's similar to the pimping game you're talking about, because now there's a situation and a void where there's no covering for the woman and for the young males also, to where now they have to rely on and are easily taken advantage of from the oppressive factor in that scenario. And so those things over the years, you were talking about so much being on the female, and males having a stigma about, or an inferiority complex about certain situations where they were not able to protect their women. They were left in a situation where they, could be a figure in the home, but when it came to anything about protection, that may have been as far as the conversation could go, because always in the back of maybe the female's mind or the male's mind, that authority and that ability to protect only went so far, because at any moment, the infliction upon the body the pain could be inflicted at any moment, and she's left hopeless. So she had to be this strong figure that could speak out or speak up for the male or for the sons, And when it came to an idea of a sexual relationship that one may wanted to have had with the slave woman in terms of the slave master, she had some leverage to deal with. And unfortunately, the leverage was her body. And so I think some of these things need to be unpacked in our contemporary society so that, excuse me, we can better understand what we're dealing with.
Well, especially when you start about the post-traumatic slave syndrome, and sometimes people don't understand, why am I like this? Well, it's generational. And it's systemic because of you put generational with systemic conditions, then you begin to start forming that habit, that normal of dealing with, almost kowtowing.
Yes.
You can't move. How when we put the 3 strikes law into the community, which adversely affect the African American community, is that you got 2 strikes. You get 1 more, your bid is for life. And so it's kind of like, do you kick the field goal or do you try to run it in for the touchdown?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Regardless of whichever way you roll with it, if you down by 7, or if you down by 6, if you kick the field goal, you at 3. If you run into the touchdown, you still got to get the extra point. So even though you put in work to get the touchdown, you ain't won yet. And I think a lot of black men started realizing, regardless of whatever I do, I got to go cautiously. I can't just go for it, because if I come up short, game over. So regardless of how much work, how much effort I put into it, I'm still down.
That rings true with a lot of people.
So I'm still at this dilemma about leadership, about decision. This is where, when you have white privilege, it's like, you know what? We're going to go ahead and go for the 6 and then go for the 2 points.
You can afford
because we can afford to.
Yeah, there's a safety net there.
Big safety net. And so when you got 10 players where 11 players should be, or somebody's hurt, can't nobody get hurt. I think that's what happens here, whether emotionally or physically. And so when you deal in a situation where can't nobody get hurt on the team, all the players are needed. If somebody gets hurt, we down a man. And I think what's happened here, we have been confronted with people being able to have us down a man with everything we do. Because if we ever get a chance to play man to man, game is not going to be competitive. We will take the championship every time. It's been proven. But when you put in that factor of systemic conditions and fear that if you don't stay in your place, then you know what's going to happen to you. And when a woman begins to look at a man like that, that questions him even further. And so what we've been basically doing is, how did this flip? How did this whole issue? Because when the father-daughter relationship, when she sees that strength, and daughters marry their fathers, or marry who their fathers used to be before he got saved again.
Mm-hmm.
But this is where we have to start changing the paradigm. And what I've been told with Daughters Lives Matter is we want to see the paradigm shift. We want to be able to see strong men, African American men, in our communities that understand how to stay in the game, how to parent, how to lead. We need that. Now, although you may be confronted with some issues outside of the home, we need that in the home.
Absolutely.
And I think this is where we are with Daughters Lives Matter. That's why I'm calling men that don't wait for her to run into somebody who didn't have this happen. Start with you and now begin to reinforce the importance of her education, the importance of her being safe, the importance of her being financially secure and out of poverty. Because if her daddy has taught her that, she will basically require that, and it will also cause him to step his game up. Because if they have a daughter together, we now are basically into new cycle development versus basically trying to break the cycle. We are always, as a community, in a situation of always trying to break the cycle. Let's start changing the narrative about establishing a new standard of what the cycle is going to become.
Outstanding. Yes. So with that, those three principles for our listeners: education, attainment, as Terry Boykins just expressed to us before. Education attainment is important in the streets and in the sheets, right? Classroom. Victimization prevention, right? Speaking out and talking, and that need to feel safe, so that, as you mentioned before, so that daughters would have a place and know that if they need safety, they need to talk, they can come to their fathers and speak about those things. And then poverty avoidance, of course, right? So I like the idea of refashioning the image, refashioning the cycle, the paradigm, and creating it, as opposed to being reactive and to systems in society, but creating those. I know that you, excuse me one second. I know that you've done some work with some other groups that focus specifically on young women, such as I believe it's Wonder Writers, and is it Yvette or Ivette out of San Diego?
IVAT, Institutes for Violence, Abuse, and Trauma. Yes.
Okay, great. Well, Mr. Boykins, with that, I'd like to take a quick commercial break to give a chance for our sponsors to share some information with you. You're listening to Let's Chew the Gum, the podcast where we talk about everything from A to Z. We'll be right back.
Something for your mind.
Please smile again.
Something for your
If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it could be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. You can make money from your podcast also, with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So what are you waiting for? Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Really quick, I want to give a shout out to Dr. Joy DeGruy. You had mentioned the post-traumatic slave syndrome. I know that she's done some extensive work in that area and others. So I just want to give some shout outs to folks like that. And now there is a group out of Ethiopia that has sought your services to do some assisting in talking with some of the young women there. Is it Ethiopia, Somalia?
Yeah, President Terset, who is the president of the Hosanna Broadcasting Network, which is a faith-based broadcasting network, is doing quite a bit to address the issue of victimization prevention, particularly with regards to girls from Somalia and Ethiopia, and is doing it in LA County. And so working with them, her and I are creating a dialogue about how we become more effective in content, as well as events and education and resources, particularly in that region of the world that has a large population outside of Ethiopia and Somalia, just in the Los Angeles County area. And so it's interesting to actually get into a global, international appeal. We not even got into the issue of organ harvesting, and that's a whole nother pimping game going on. But we have to basically look at around the world, women of color are being compromised, and fathers, because of their stature in the community and what's been considered to be hard, or you don't let your girl do that to you, or you don't let your woman do that to you. Where did that come from? That narrative came from somewhere. That's not who we are. We usually take care of our own, and she's gonna follow the rules, but she's following the rules because I'm trying to get her somewhere. I'm not trying to maintain my position as a man and letting my homies know I got this. it's like, you know what? I got to get her out here in this world of wolves and sheep clothing so that she can be an aspiration, an inspiration, and an asset to the family. And whoever she brings becomes an asset to the family. You know, we talk about asset building with regards to who your family members get involved with. If you look at in white privilege, you know, these folks will show you all the time that, you know, this particular person's hooking up with that person, this person's going with that person, and then all of a sudden, you know, you get the Prince Harry situation, and it's like, you got to go. You got this black woman in the game, and we got to show you the gates.
How about that?
What message is that sending, that our daughters aren't good enough for royalty? That's the message that I got.
It's a dangerous message. It reinforces, you know, historical precedents that we've had before that have really kept a certain group of people from feeling like they do belong or that they can achieve. You know, it's eliminating yet again another positive role model or something that young girls can aspire to. So I'm really glad you picked up and touched upon that because that's important. You know, I'm often talking.
Meghan Markle, I guess Meghan. Yeah. So this is where, here it is. How many times have we heard the narrative about a single black mother having to get into a relationship, not having to, but getting into a relationship with another individual, becomes a stepfather, and to go through that dynamic. But now, where's it different? It's who these black women, when you start talking African Americans, who has become accustomed to, this is their narrative. It doesn't matter how royal somebody is or how the perception of it is. If I'm a single black mother, I ain't good enough at all. I ain't good enough for the royal family. I ain't good enough for your family. I ain't good enough for their family. I'm just a single black mother out here trying to make it happen with some other means. And so this narrative, do daughters' lives matter? I mean, just from a female to female situation of being two daughters, of saying that now that you've gotten somewhere in this royal family, you matter. That would have been really the message. But, you know, when you get into all of the politicking or images of, are you as a black woman married to this white privilege and royalty, we got to ask you to leave the house.
Dangerous message, man. That's sad and unfortunate. And for your listeners, let's just remind you, you're listening to Let's Chew the Gum, the podcast where we talk about everything from A to Z. Today we have our guest, Mr. Terry Boykins of Street Positive, and we're having a conversation about pimp-proofing our daughters, our sons, our communities, and in general, social responsibility. You can find our podcast on several platforms, including iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, YouTube, Anchor, Chaser, Podbean. There's quite a few. If you have show topics you'd like to discuss, please email us at letschewthegum@gmail.com or at protocol@gmail.com. That's PROTKALL@gmail.com. And feel free to submit requests to be on the show as a guest, such as our illustrious guest today, Mr. Terry Boykins. Terry, I wanted to talk more about the male and the things that we can do to help our males so that they will be able in body and mind to help our daughters. And we had a conversation the other day about helping hurt men heal. And I alluded to it earlier that oftentimes males in particular won't seek out or don't feel the need to express their hurt or to let someone know that they're hurt so that they can get the healing that they may not know that they need. What are some things we can do to address that, or topics or interventions that you've done in that regard?
let me tell you, one of the biggest things, and I want to make sure I'm clear on the record, and you can go to streetpositive.com to learn a little bit more about what we're talking about doing with Helping Hurt When Heal. But, all my brothers and sisters in the LGBTQ movement, you got to do what's right for you. But we also got to make sure we do what's right for men, heterosexual men, that have been conflicted with what their next move is. And we're having to say, and I'll go on record, it's okay to be heterosexual. I just got to be real with that. And we have gotten to a point where we've made people question whether or not they can deal with their issues as heterosexual men. Helping Hurt Men Heal. The molestation, the abandonment, just like with fathers with daughters, the physical discipline about how maybe their fathers had them challenged physically to man up. Don't cry, boy, slap them in the back of the head, maybe punch them a little bit, rough them up a little bit, if that's being a man. So I know a lot of men have had to stand by and watch their father figure or stepfather or biological father show what he thought it was to be a man. It goes down generationally, slapping the mama a little around, playing the game, doing what he needs to do. And is that healthy? We know that it's not, because I've had too many conversations and too many sessions and too many workshops that says otherwise. So there's a form on Street Positive called the Man Plan. And the Man Plan is for emotional and financial success for men. And it gets them to actually put their issues on paper, from their financial standings to their emotional needs, to their education accomplishment, to their vital signs in terms of looking at themselves. How many kids do you really have? Not just the ones you claim, but how many kids do you really have? And what are you doing to deal with that aspect of your life? What is your income? What is your income potential? Where are you working? So it's about looking at the snapshot of who a man is. And then it's about his support system. Who do you rely on? Who do you go to? Who do you think you can go to? Do you have anybody to go to? I found out there's a lot of men out there just trying to do it on their own. They're just doing it with the television. They're just doing it with public imaging or social media. They're just going through the motions. And what I've found out as well is a lot of men are starting to admit, I don't know how. And we have been talking to them as men, but you're talking to men who are admitting that they don't know how to be a man, and you still keep talking to them as if they're a man.
Right.
That's a problem.
And
And if you're talking to a man who don't know how to be a man about being a man, you're going to get a confused individual.
Yeah. Yes.
And so Helping Hurt Men Heal is, first of all, making sure that they understand the proper resources to help them uncover some things. And then to move from those resources to help, therapy, counseling, treatment, whatever it may be. Because the objective is to get you to thrive and live the lifespan as abundantly as you can possibly achieve in the life that you have been given by your God. And if we can do that, if we can get back to first allowing men to acknowledge that it's okay to not know, but it's even more okay to not know and to seek help, that's what we want to do with the Man Plan. And so I think to date, there's been like 600,000 downloads of the Man Plan.
That's great.
And so people, they'll call me and they're talking about the Man Plan. And when you get to the website, you'll see. And the slogan there is, people play games. You better have a man plan.
I love it.
Because you'll go through this life thinking that it's just a bed of roses, but you got folks that's going to play games with you. And it's going to get disruptions in your life. And if you don't have a man plan to keep you on focus, to keep you on your destiny, and keep you on your journey to achieving something for you individually as your family, you're going to get played, you're going to get pimped, and you're going to get behind the 8-ball. And I guarantee you, when the 8-ball goes in the corner pocket or side pocket, game over. If you got balls still on the table. People play games. You better have a man plan.
I love it. You guys, check out the website, streetpositive.com, and check out that man plan resource, either for yourself or for someone you know. Share it, post it. That's great. Speaking of planning, I know that you had mentioned to me in a different setting that we were talking about the stimulus checks that are coming out, and you were saying that the importance of folks in realizing that some of that needs to be invested back into either your own children or the children in your family, nieces, nephews, whether you're opening an account for them and letting them know and teaching them some responsibility about that. Go ahead and speak about that for a minute, how that can be a part of the plan.
Yeah, critical. I think when you talk about stimulus and what's going on in the economy, I think it's about investing in your family's children. So I challenge everyone who's going to be receiving a stimulus check that's going to be coming from the government as we go through this part of our economy in the downturn of the coronavirus, COVID-19. Take some money. I don't care if it's $50, $10, and then let that child know, I'm taking a part of the stimulus money that I've gotten, that mama's got, daddy's got, and we're going to invest it in your future. We're going to stimulate your future. And go take them to open an account and have them put that money into the account of your child with you as the adult signer. And then you want to basically have a conversation with that child about, now that we invested in you, what do you want this family to become 10 years from now? How do you want this stimulus? How are you going to help this family reach their goals? That conversation will change your family dynamics, because now that child knows that there's a monetary and tangible and a concern and a care being invested in them. When you talk about your little nephew or your son that's not acting right, have that conversation. What do you want this family? I ain't worried about Pookie's family. I ain't worried about Ray Ray's family. What do you want this family to look like 10 years from now? And then write it down. And then also, if you want to go to another level with the game, write up a commitment that you are going to have them sign that shows what they said they want the family to look like 10 years from now. It goes with my name on the street, 10-year Terry. People know I'm already looking at your 10-year plan. That's why the man plan. I want to know not what you're just dealing with today, but I want to make sure that if you understand 2008 and 2009, and we here in 2020, 2019, COVID-19, 2009, COVID-19, come on, people. You already know something's on the brink here. That's a 10-year game right there.
How about that?
I'm just saying.
No, you said it well, and it's clear. Now that's great. I think that idea of involving the children, the younger people in that process of asking them what it looks like, involving them in creating the plan, I think it goes a long way to preparing them for adulthood in many ways. And one of them is accountability. They have a reference that they can look to. They wake up with a purpose. They know why it is that they're going to school. They know why it is that they're getting an education. They know why it is that they're investing. So they become accountable, and they walk around with a sense of purpose. You know, ignorance is bliss, and childhood is great, and children should have fun and play. But we cannot afford to miss opportunities to teach the children and to prepare them for what they really are going to encounter in life. So that's great, and goes a long way in doing that to help them for sustainability.
And accountability and sustainability is critical. A lot of people think that most folks made their money on real estate or the stock market. The truth of the matter of the man who's got the best insurance plan is the one who's going to take care of his family.
Say it. I like that.
If you think about most wealth that's been made, it's been made as a result of somebody who passed away having planned effectively enough to take care of their family. So death is a commodity.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the history, if you look at your research, most wealth has been created as a result of insurance plans, not by real estate.
Absolutely. Passed down. Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. You know,
so my point to the listeners, y'all take that same money that you're going to be making those rest in peace signs on the corner trying to get the donations, and invest that into a life insurance policy that has the ability to pay and give your loved one a decent memorial service.
You heard it. That's outstanding, man. There's so much useful information that I hope the listeners are picking up on that. And listeners, you should definitely catalog this episode and the previous one to reflect and to go back over them, because there's a lot of gems and a lot of useful information for people who are hurting and suffering in real ways. That's why I like to have these conversations. Not only are they informative, but they're practical and it's relevant for us right now. I would add to that this idea of involving children. And you know this, they are a great mirror for what's lacking in the home. You told me the other day, you said, don't be mad when your kids tell you the truth about what's happening in your home or what things look like, because that's a great way to assess, right? The truth hurts, but you can't be mad at the truth. And if you prepare yourself well, you can utilize that for a tool for growth as well, right?
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's right. And this has become so critical. I think that when you talk about hurt people, parents hurt their kids by not allowing their kids to share what they feel and what they see. And sometimes it has to be adjusted with the lens, but you don't get mad at your child for telling the truth. And we've gotten so accustomed to censoring a child, and the good word of the Bible, those that are following it, is the out of the mouth of babes. Train up a child. Have all these scriptures. But we have to basically allow, if we're willing to put our child on video that goes viral with them doing some nasty dance, then we need to be able to listen to our child's truth about how they ended up doing that dance in the first way. Mm-hmm. My mama taught me that dance. Mm-hmm. My daddy taught me that dance. My mama taught me how to grind on a chair. My auntie taught me how to grind on a chair. My daddy taught me how to grind on the floor. Mm-hmm. So where's the root of it? So when a child tells you that, Mama, I don't really like them men coming to the house. Mama, how come you always having them men come? Bam, boy, shut up. Don't be talking to me like that. What? I mean, I don't know, Daddy. I don't know if should I really be out here with you doing this? And so we need to really understand that kids, the innocence of them sharing the truth is really a reminder that hope is still possible, that civility is still possible. If a child is acknowledging the truth of a situation, that really should become a red flag to say that maybe I need to change some things. Maybe I need to observe some things. You know, if you got a child that's saying, I don't like the way so-and-so look at me. I don't like the way that man you call your friend always asks me to come sit on his lap. I don't like sitting on his lap. And you say, oh, don't worry about that. I mean, you know, he ain't doing nothing to you. Well, maybe he is. Trauma.
Absolutely. Trauma begets trauma. You know, there's one thing I've always been adamant about, and that is listening to kids. And when you know, when a kid senses something and they're telling you something, you know, it's not to be ignored. I sometimes joke around with the horror movies. You know, someone comes in, hey, there's a ghost in the closet. You know, nah, it's nothing. If my child tells me there's a ghost in the closet, damn it, we're going to check out the closet, okay? You know, so
check out the closet.
Yeah, we're going to check out the closet. We're going to make sure, because, you know, a monster's under my bed. Okay, we're going to check under the bed. You know, we don't know what that is or what the kid is trying to express, right? So we need to be attentive to our children, right? Because they're younger models of us, and we want them to be able to have those skills. And again, I think that's where the belief and security comes from. Father-daughter, mother-daughter, father-son, mother-son relationships, when children know from a young age that they're going to be listened to, that they're going to be heard. So when they get to those ages where they're out of the home and they're vulnerable, or they're discovering themselves and new things about the world that they're confused about, if you've established those communication relationships early on, they'll feel free to continue to communicate with you and continue to rely on you as a resource for help, and not Johnny down on the corner because you didn't take time to listen. And we don't know what Johnny is telling them. And Johnny is again waiting for someone that he can or she can take advantage of. So we have to really secure our families and protect our families in that way. That's critical.
You know, and I tell you, it's so interesting you say that, because I've had grown women ask me if I would be their daddy. Could you be my daddy? I wish you was my daddy. These are grown women. And I haven't asked myself, why would a woman ask me that? So I started dialogue, going back to the Daughters' Lives Matter, the pimp proofing component. And they said, because you know what? You can give me something that I didn't get before. If I had the wrong intentions, Dr. Kawanda, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
If I had the wrong intentions, I could take that and just move it all over the board.
Vulnerable population.
Vulnerability.
Yes.
Absolutely. And so when I began to think about Daughters' Lives Matter and pimp proofing, I said, you know, we better catch this with our girls, because if this is a way a bitter and broken woman is feeling, now I understand the sex trafficking game. Now I understand the prostitution, the adult film game, is that if I can take this, knowing this information, knowing this intelligence, and put it to work for me and put a dollar figure on it, I got this.
Yeah. I'm glad you have great intentions. And, you know, as an educator myself at the high school and university level, I encounter those stories as well. And it's because I think that, you know, good people and folks like us that are in the game of helping others, you know, it's attractive to individuals in need. And so we really do need to have good pillars out there that are not advantageous, but seeking to help others in a way that helps to edify their families and set them on proper paths. Because as you said, they're vulnerable. People are vulnerable and are easily taken advantage of. So if we can replicate some of the great things that you're doing with your organization and continue to invest in our children so that they become those pillars and they understand that dynamic. Earlier, you talked about the importance of structuring proper relationships so that women can be there for their families or be strong. That hit home so well, because I was speaking to a group of young men about taking care of their pregnant significant others, whether it's a wife or a girlfriend, mentally and emotionally, because that trauma that you may create, it affects the baby. It affects the mother's ability to rest and have a peace of mind. It can induce stress, which in turn goes into the child. And those things begin early on. And if you aren't taking care of them mentally and emotionally, that's a traumatic situation waiting to happen. So if you say you love someone, if you say you love your children, we really need to look at the practices that we implement and what ingredients are we putting into the pot, right? So it's more, I always say that love is not a noun, it's a verb. It's really about what you do.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And so that's what we're doing. This is what we're about. It's been a lot of exciting. There's a lot of things have changed with the organization since 2012. And I encourage individuals to go to daughterslivesmatter.com to see what we're doing, because we're working on the fathers. This is not just about a daughters movement. It's a fatherhood campaign to reestablish the value of healthy father-daughter relationships, to build our communities, to be in a safe environment, to be in a financially secure environment, to be in a spiritual and an emotionally sound environment. And it's about fathers being able to understand their value. You don't have to be afraid, just because society says you have to be afraid. You have to be available because your family needs you to be available. And it's important to be present when you're available, because if you're distracted, and as we mentioned about men wearing other men's names on their backs, this is where your child's going to be distracted. And I think that it's interesting that daughters, they give up their father's name to take their husband's name, if that's what the arrangement is. But it's about taking on that name that actually has value to you. You know, you start wearing some other man's name on your back, maybe you want to be on your back with that man. I don't know. Maybe you do. Maybe you want her to be on her back with another man's name. You got to ask yourself, what message are you sending? If my name ain't good enough for you, girl,
how about that?
I got to wear another man's name for you to understand, you know, who I am, who I support. Take that number, represent with your name, give a shout out to your best athlete. I get all that. But at the same time, what message are you sending?
You know, I before we wrap up, I'm just going to say I'm guilty of that, of wearing others' names on my back as a big sports fan. And I had mentioned that I had reconsidered that recently, because the 3 jerseys that I had a few, but the 3 particular ones I'm thinking of now are players that were my favorite players that, you know, I put on the jersey and am I feeling like I'm them? Does it give me extra strength, or am I getting back to my, whatever it may be? But the fact of the matter is all those players were traded to other teams, and I'm stuck with that name. And I told my son and some others, I said, from now on, I'm just going to buy the jersey and put my name on it and represent that team. So it'll be team me. So hopefully it'll be team you all. Again, nothing wrong with
just so I can hear you say it. Mention your last name.
My last name is Kawanda.
And see, think about that. I mean, that's like right up there with Black Panther.
Right.
You know.
Exactly.
But see, this is the power of it. When you talk about that confidence, man, you know, when you said that, it just, you know, chills went through me, because there was confidence. Like, I know who I am. I know what name's on my back. See, when you talk about the post-traumatic slave syndrome, we've had other people put their names on our back. See, we forgot who we were.
How about that?
So we playing in another man's game with another man's name and don't have any benefit of being at the championship game.
That's not a formula for winning, for sure, man.
At all.
Those are some great gems. Well, you know, Mr. Boykins, we could go on and we could talk for days about things, because the information, again, is relevant, is real, and it's applicable. And we hope that you are enjoying this. I just want to give a quick call back to your principles that you were sharing with the audience, and that is, fathers and mothers alike, please emphasize education attainment within your family structure, educating your daughters about the streets, educating them about the sheets and in the classroom, and focus on this victimization prevention, right? Ensure your children feel safe to come to you so that you can prevent them from becoming victims of someone else. And then poverty avoidance. The topic was brought up about investing in yourselves, whether it's with the stimulus checks that are coming out or money that you already have. Invest in yourselves and in your families and in your relationships for lifelong sustainability and empowerment. And be sure to check out the website for my guest, Terry Boykins, at streetpositive.com. Again, you can pick up the man plan there, and please distribute that within your family structure, communities, or as a document to read for yourself, right? You never know when you come across someone that will find that useful. We're coming to the end of our session, so I just want to add an opportunity for you, Mr. Boykins. Is there anything else you'd like to put out to our audience? You've put out a lot of great information, but one last call.
I tell you, I just have a challenge. I would like to have everyone support what we're doing at streetpositive.com and Daughters Lives Matter. And also, too, I want you to get a Sharpie. And I want you to just get a plain white T-shirt. And I want you to write your family's last name on your right T-shirt and put it on and just wear it around the house and start pulling your team together, your family team together, and start valuing and meaning something. Because at the end of the day, when your day comes, it's going to be your name that's going to be a legacy, or it's going to be forgotten. But if you got that name on your shirt, in your family, in your household, it will last generation after generation after generation. And that's basically all I want to share, Dr. Kawanda.
That was great, guys. You've heard it here. You've been listening to Let's Chew the Gum, the podcast where we talk about everything from A to Z. Today's guest has been Terry Boykins of Street Positive. He's laid out a plan, a format, a structure, and I have no doubt that if it's followed even on the outskirts of what he said, it will lead to success. So we want to thank you very much. Reach us on letschewthegum@gmail.com, at protocol.com. Check out the show on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iTunes, SoundCloud, Breaker, Spreaker, Podbean, Podchaser, and many others. You can also go to anchor.fm/protocol, Facebook, Instagram. We're out there. We want to put the information out like you heard today, and we're so thankful for you joining us. Tune in next time, and remember, we always have
Something for your mind. Something for your mind.
Lace smile gal.
Something for your mind.
정신을 집어넣으세요. 어떤 것 필요합니까?
Something for your
정신을 집어넣으세요.
mind.